We're here with David Orshalick, who is one of the 8 candidates running for mayor of Austin. Thank you for being here, David.
Thanks, Brandy.
You have some opinions about the way the city is being run right now and what we need to be doing differently. So why don't you just lay it out for us right here?
Well, Brandy, I jumped into the race very late for mayor because I was waiting for one of the other candidates to say they understood what our problems are and that they had at least 1 or 2 solutions for them. And they didn't do that, and they still haven't done that. So I was forced to run for mayor because I have solutions for our problems, and I understand our problems, and I think I can explain them so the voters can understand them.
And what is your solution?
Well, first we have to understand what the problem is, and from an environmental standpoint, we have an unsustainable growth model. We have too many people coming to Austin, and we just don't have housing for all of them. So our cost of living is just going through the roof. And Austin used to have one of the lowest costs of living in Texas, and now we have the highest. We have the highest rents for sure.
What would you do about that? How would you address the affordability?
Well, we have a very low supply of housing, and we have a very high demand for that housing. And what we need to do is bring the demand for housing down and explode the supply of housing.
Where should we be building that?
That's a good question. I am a neighborhood activist and advocate. So the quality of life of every neighborhood and every person living in a neighborhood, which is all of us, is very important to me. So I believe that not only should we preserve our quality of life, but we should improve our quality of life. In order to do that, we can't follow the tenets of our comprehensive plan. Imaginary Austin, which is what I call Imagine Austin, is not going to get us there. By pushing more people into the core of Austin, we will do nothing but raise the misery index for every neighborhood in Austin's core. So the goal is to create housing outside of Austin's core and make it attractive enough that people who are moving to Austin, and even people who live here, would want to live there. And there are several ways of doing it. The first way is to improve our mass transit partner. Right now, Cap Metro is an incompetent and unreliable mass transit partner. They need to be turned around. And once we have that, we can have mass transit throughout the city for a very low cost, and we can also do true transit-oriented development. But I think the biggest solution I've come up with so far is to create 1 or more innovation districts outside the core of Austin. We could have an Austin North and Austin South, and they could house 50 to 100,000 people. And those could be the vision that's currently in Imagine Austin for walkable urban spaces where people can work and walk and shop and live and entertain themselves in one area. And those could be like new central business districts. But the key is people who live there have to be able to get to the core of Austin very quickly. And the way to do that is have good mass transit. And I have a lot of solutions for that, but I won't get into that right now.
Well, let's go there. What are your solutions for mass transit and for transportation?
I am dead set against the urban rail proposal.
Okay. Prop 1?
Yeah, Prop 1. Because the people who talk about affordability in Austin and we have to improve the affordability, they're not really sincere. They're hypocritical because they talk out of one side of their mouth about affordability, and out of the other side of their mouth they're saying, but vote for $1 billion rail bond that won't benefit most of you, but you have to pay for it. So it's anti-affordability. Plus, it does exactly the opposite of what they're claiming. It would increase congestion, it would increase demand downtown, and it would be incredibly inflationary, not just because it raises property taxes, but because it raises the value of all properties by putting density in the wrong place.
So if we build on the periphery, what system do you propose?
So here's what we need. After reforming and revamping Cap Metro, we also need to develop a true transportation infrastructure backbone. Just like we hang off of our backbone, the city transportation system should hang off that backbone. And that backbone should include both roads, which account for 95% of all transportation in town, all personal transportation.
Lots of it single occupancy vehicles.
That's true.
Yes.
and less than 5% is for mass transit right now. So a possible solution, I'm not saying we have to stick with just that, is to convert I-35 into a 12-lane superhighway with 4 tubes of subway and 4 tubes of Lone Star Rail, the rail they want to put from Georgetown to San Antonio. So by doing it that way, we'd have all these pots of money in one pot, and it would become affordable. And we could get money from the federal government, several agencies of the federal government, the state government, TxDOT, the county, and the city, as well as Cap Metro. And of course, I could envision that we could have that transportation infrastructure backbone underneath the current I-35. So between 183 in the north and Ben White in the south. So what we'd end up with is a 6-lane divided boulevard where I-35 is right now, like we had East Avenue 60 years ago.
Right.
But that's just one example. Another example would be to take North Lamar, Guadalupe, and South Congress and convert it to a 6-lane divided parkway and put elevated rail over that. And we could serve, again, going from 183 to Ben White. And I would
You say 6-lane divided, does that mean taking out the buildings that are adjacent to South Congress and Lamar?
No, it's not. Because
You're saying it would fit within the...
It will fit most of
Okay.
the places. We'd have to get a little right-of-way where there's currently sidewalks and utility poles. But in most places, we already have the right-of-way. And in some places, we wouldn't get to have a 12-foot divided median. We'd only get to have maybe a foot median. But, we could work that out technically.
Okay. All right, let's shift to water. You think that actually talk about your idea for master planning or strategic planning and how you think we need to
I'll
be
do it
doing
in reference to the water, because
Okay.
it was the water that really spurred my thinking about this. So I was at an Austin Neighborhoods Council meeting, and someone from the Water Task Force was there, and they were talking about all their recommendations for Austin Water to make Austin conserve more and stretch our water resources and develop new water resources just from what we have. And then at the end, she said, and we need a 25-year master plan. So I raised my hand and I say, is that a strategic plan? She said, yes. And I said, if we had a city strategic plan, could that be rolled into the city strategic plan? And she said, yes. So I had already been thinking along the lines of a strategic plan, because once you start to do strategic planning for the city, and you have to look out 25 years, all kinds of things come into your mind. You're forced to look at the water resources, the transportation resources. It just goes on and on.
Define your version of what strategic plan is, because some people would think we just adopted one, right? Our comprehensive plan.
Oh, no, the comprehensive plan is a creature of state law. It is not a strategic plan. It has a little bit of policy in it, but it's really not a rigorous, disciplined planning process. We've missed that for years. We've been cheated and lied to because we haven't had a strategic plan. So in a strategic plan, which every major corporation uses because they don't like uncertainty and they want to mitigate and manage risk, they use this plan that looks out to whatever planning horizon they have, 10 or 15 years. In our case, it would have to be at least 25 years. And they also put in what they're going to do in the following year. And at the end of the year, they extend the plan by 1 more year. So it's always a 25-year planning horizon. But within that 1 year, you see exactly what the city intends to do, why they intend to do it, and they even give the performance measure. So at the end of the year, you and I can look at what the city did and see whether or not they met their performance goals.
Very interesting. Okay, so if you were elected and you, in terms of setting priorities, if you could accomplish one thing while in office, what would it be?
It would be to institute strategic planning. I would
Okay.
ask the city council to pass it as an ordinance, and then, of course, I'd want to make it part of the charter, so future city councils couldn't get rid of the strategic planning.
Okay. And looking forward to the next 5 years, what is your greatest hope for Austin as it pertains to the environment?
Well, assuming we get the strategic planning done, the environment and our environmental policies would be a piece of the strategic plan. And once this is part of the city charter, we wouldn't have to keep fighting the same environmental issues every single election. It would be wired into the strategic plan. We'd know exactly how we're going to get there and why we're going to get there. We'd know exactly what our policies are. And that's just what we do. We'd no longer have to bow to the developmental interests who would try to change things like the Heritage Tree Ordinance, for example.
And what should we do with that?
Oh, the Heritage Tree Ordinance would just be part of the whole environmental sector that would be included in the strategic plan. And as far as I'm concerned, we would strengthen the Heritage Tree Ordinance because I think maintaining our green canopy is a very important thing to quality of life in Austin, Texas.
Right. One thing we didn't touch on last, it's important to everyone, is energy. How should we be getting it, conserving it? What do we need to do to be smarter about it moving forward?
Again, Austin Energy has never done a strategic plan in a disciplined way, and not a strategic plan that was part of a city strategic plan.
So what should we be using? How should we be sourcing our energy?
Well, I agree with all the things that the council is pushing for. The council is very famous for saying, we're going to do this and we're going to do that, but they never give the resources necessary to accomplish these things. I mean, just take parks, for example. Within the past 6 years, they passed 2 parks ordinances mandating that everyone in Austin live within a half a mile of a park or green space. And if you're in the core, within a quarter of a mile. We still have neighborhoods that don't even have 1 park or green space, and they never gave any money to PARDS to do that.
Right. Anything else you want to conclude with or make sure that the voters know about you and your candidacy?
We have some very critical issues to tackle, and we have to hit the ground running when the new council comes in. They have to reverse some of the policies of this current council who has not served us well. And if we can get most of what I'm talking about with the strategic planning, business process reengineering, I think we can get all of the environmental issues that we want tackled taken care of right away. So we will see our roadmap for making sure that Austin is the greenest city in the country. Just as the United States is a shining beacon on the hill and has been for a long time to countries around the world and people around the world, Austin, Texas could be the shining beacon on the hill that other cities in the United States can copy.
Great. Thank you for being here, David. It was a pleasure.
Thanks, Brandon.